Okay, so we've got all of our cameras updated, everything, framed with our new landscape objects. And so now it's time to start adding some effects. So when I add effects, I just pick one image. I'm going to start with like that front image of the front elevation of the house, add all the effects to make it look really good. And then we're just going to copy them all along to all the other images and see where we get. Let's get to it. All right, so for adding our effects, I'm going to start with like one of these kind of standard issue renderings, the front of the house. And when I add effects, I do it the same way every time. All right, so we go to add effects, and the first thing I do is find a sky. All right, so we go to real skies and just pick one of these real skies. All right, and then you can just adjust your heading, and find like where the shadows are going to look good. I usually do choose something different than the default real sky. I usually go to a clear day, and I like this clear 4 is always good. This one seems to turn out pretty nice too. And let's just adjust the heading until our shadows, which we're really close right there. It's like you want to get your shadows casting down where, you're getting like a nice, 45-degree shadow, a little bit of clouds. I think that looks pretty good right there. I'll just click to have it render, and maybe it's a little bit out of balance, so I might adjust my heading just a notch. Let's see if something like that might be kind of nice too, but we just don't want like that front elevation to be totally covered in shadow. So yeah, something like that. I'm good with that. All right. So, and you could also add the sun effect to override the placement of your sun in the real sky. But I find that when you start getting into that, you really start cheating it, and it's kind of nice just to run with the settings that real skies gives. So I don't tend to override that all too often. All right, so I'll go to my effects, and so like I said, you can add this sun effect to override it. On the weather tab, I always add precipitation, and then the particle quantity and size gets turned off, and the fog addition gets turned off. And see, it leaves like rain on the ground, and then you can choose like, do you want like a little bit of rain just to get the street to do something a little bit different, so it's not so computer generated, just another layer of realism happening. All right, so that looks pretty good. And we'll just click on the effects button, and we're good with our weather. We're good with our sky. Not too concerned about our objects. On camera, 2-point perspective, I always do that, and it should always be enabled. Click on the FX to get back here, and I'm not going to mess with exposure or depth of field. Those can come in later if you really want them. Lens flare, I do tend to use this. I like my renderings, I'll just dial this up. See, I like to add this kind of like dreamy haze. Of course, not that much, but like, just bringing this up a little bit to kind of brighten it or haze this thing. I think it's cool because it also lays a nice base for our outlines. All right, so that's why I do it. But sometimes we get pushback on that. If the client doesn't like it, then we, kind of back it off and make it a little bit more photorealistic. So I'm going to add my outlines right now, though. I'll go back to my effects, go to Artistic 1, and add outlines. All right, now the outlines, you want your transparency, or I want it all the way up. And then the density and, overdraw is fine. That can kind of be whatever it is. But the density of your outlines, I think that should just be dialed down a bit. And so, you get this kind of balance between a little bit of a photoreal image, but it's got these lines on it that kind of make it more sketchy, and it just kind of softens that computer look of your image, I think. All right. So then you could also go back to like your lens flare and take a look at your master brightness, and that's where you can start to see, how you make that kind of pop a little bit. All right, so we were working, I think we got to camera and we added lens flare. I'm all set with all these. Animation, nothing going on there. Artistic, we've got our outlines, and then color correction always comes into play. And so here, if I like render it, it's, well, when we add real skies, that's where it really gets kind of color correction comes into play. So let's not mess with color correction yet. Let's go to our advanced. I can tell you that that's all I'm going to add here. And then Artistic 2 has nothing I'm interested in. But advanced, this is good stuff. All right, so shadows, check this out. We'll add our shadows, and watch, you know, if I go with like soft shadows and then fine detail shadows, those are real nice. So those probably get real heavy, but I don't care. I've got a pretty powerful machine and graphics card. They'll render fast. And then you can just click to test it. All right. So then our shadows are exterior, and you could mess with the brightness of your shadows. I mean, if they're getting kind of heavy on contrast, that's fine. And I usually dial up my Omni shadows pretty high. All right, and then we'll go back to our effects. We'll add hyperlight, although I'm not sure that it totally comes into play with just sunlight. And let's add our skylight. All right, so skylight, watch what happens when I render this. See how it got real blue? So now this whole image is rather blue. So I need to go back into my color correction and adjust the temperature. So this is usually the deal that I find, is that the temperature needs to be exaggerated. See how it's real warm? But when I render it, the skylight kind of balances it out because the skylight cools it off. So I would say that maybe just a little bit backed off there, and that's going to look a little bit better. So pretty cool. All right, so then color correction, maybe just a little bit more contrast could look cool, and maybe a little saturation. I think that, you know, if you mess with this stuff too much, it starts to get, you start like battling between the effects, but I like it. You know, something else to keep in mind too is that, you know, where is this image going to show up? Like, are you going to print it? Are you going to put it on a computer screen? Is the client going to look at it on their phone? Who knows? So I just tend to not agonize too much over it. Looks good on my screen. Send it. All right. There we go. So we'll go back to our effects. All right. So the last one we've got here is probably reflection. All right. So reflections are super important. So Speed Ray will add reflections to all of your surfaces, especially something that's like, you know, this kind of curved surface that we would not be able to add a reflection plane to. So watch what happens when I turn on Speed Ray. So you get all these little reflections happening. But then I want some reflections, like perfect reflections on my glass. So for that, you use your reflection planes. Now, you can try this automatically, you know, throw those on, but it tends to not really find what I'm looking for. All right, so I'm going to delete that first one. We don't need, oh no, we do need that. That's got glass. There we go. All right, and then I'll probably throw one up front, add reflection planes here like that. And notice that I didn't add another reflection plane down here. I'm going to see if I can do like a quick demo to show you what's going on with your reflection planes. So I'll add another reflection plane here, say okay. All right, so now when I zip over, I think maybe this is going to be a good place to try to demonstrate this. Let me see here. I'm going to go to my build mode, and we're going to just dial up our reflectivity on this material. So we're just going to take the reflectivity from 0 to max power. Okay. All right. And then let's go look at that. Let's go look at that image. So here. All right. So when you're seeing these reflections, you're either seeing the reflection ball, which you never really want to use, which I think that's what we're seeing here. Maybe Speed Ray. Yeah, I'm not sure. But you can see that, this one is perfect. Like the reflection on the window above is really perfect. The reflection on the window below is really bad. Well, I added a reflection plane here. So let's adjust our reflection threshold. And it's going to use the same reflection information on that lower window without adding another reflection plane. So that way you're kind of catching a lot of those surfaces, you know, that are pretty much in line with each other, that you could use the same reflection plane. And that way you get, you know, you don't have to add double the reflection planes because they do slow you down. So there you go. And then, yeah, I suppose I would go back into build mode and let's just, you know, like adjust that reflectivity back down, you know, something more like, you know, we can do a little bit, say, okay, hop back into our photo mode. And yeah, that's coming together. Click to render it, get a quick test. And I mean, it's starting to look pretty good. I'm always looking for ways to make it look better, but I think that we're gonna probably have another session where we fill in some nice clutter and things in the background, just to kind of liven it up a bit. But I think we're looking really good. Okay, so that's all of our effects. We're good. We've got one complete rendering. If you like this video, click the BD button to subscribe to our channel. Every week we post new videos covering SketchUp, Layout, Lumion, and our Condoc Tools extension. If you are a professional architect or interior designer, you're going to love our tutorials.